The hardest lessons come from the hands you trust most. A teenager steps onto the floor of a training hall in Hong Kong. He rolls his shoulders, cracks his knuckles. He is fast. He knows it. Everyone knows it. Tonight he wants to prove he has outgrown his teacher. The old man across the room is thin, quiet, with soft hands and calm eyes. He does not look dangerous. He agrees to the challenge without a word. The teenager attacks first. Full speed, full power. Every strike misses. Every advance is redirected. He never touches the old man. Not once. In seconds he is pinned against the wall by a single open palm on his chest. The old man speaks softly. The teenager is Bruce Lee. His master is the legendary Ip Man. But what did Ip Man say that changed Bruce Lee forever? If the story moves you, subscribe and stay. Now, to understand what happened in that training hall, you need to understand the kind of young man Bruce Lee was in 1958. Not the legend. Not the movie star. Not the philosopher the world would later worship. Forget all that. In 1958, Bruce Lee was a problem. He was 18 years old, skinny, quick-tempered, and absolutely convinced that he was the most dangerous person in any room he walked into. Believe me, he had reasons to think so. By the time he was 15, he had already been in more street fights than most men see in a lifetime. The rooftops of Hong Kong were his proving ground. Back alleys, stairwells. He fought gang members. He fought rival school students. He fought strangers who looked at him wrong. And he won, almost every single time. His father, Li Hoi-chen, was a famous opera actor, a respected man, careful man, and he watched his youngest son spiral with growing fear. Bruce was not a bad kid. That is important to understand. He was not cruel. He was not hateful. He was something more dangerous than that. He was talented, and he knew it too early. See, when a young man discovers he can hurt people and not get hurt back, something shifts inside him. Not toward evil, toward recklessness, toward a belief that the rules do not apply to him. And that is exactly where Bruce Lee was living in 1958. Above the rules. His mother, Grace Ho, came from one of the wealthiest families in Hong Kong. That meant Bruce grew up with money, connections, and a safety net that most street fighters never had. He could afford to be reckless. If things went wrong, someone would fix it. If the police came, someone would make a call. That cushion made him bolder, more dangerous, not to others, to himself. Now here is the thing. His father knew the streets would eventually kill his son. Not with a knife, not with a fist, but with pride. Because pride makes you fight when you should walk away. Pride makes you stand in front of a man with a weapon and believe you are faster. And one night you are not. So his father did the only thing he could think of. He sent Bruce to train under Ip Man. Ip Man was not a large man. He was not loud. He did not carry himself the way fighters usually do. There was no swagger, no tension in his shoulders. He moved through a room the way water moves through a crack in the stone. Quietly, without resistance. And if you did not know who he was, you would walk right past him and never look twice. But Ip Man was the grandmaster of Wing Chun. And Wing Chun is not a style built on power. It is built on something far more difficult to master. Sensitivity, timing, the ability to feel what your opponent is going to do before they do it, and then redirect that energy so cleanly that the attacker defeats himself. Bruce trained under Ip Man for several years, and he was good, genuinely good. His speed was unusual. His reflexes were sharp. His coordination was ahead of anyone in the school. Even Ip Man noticed, and that was the problem. Because the better Bruce got, the less he listened. The faster his hands became, the slower his patience grew. He started skipping drills he considered beneath him. He started correcting other students. He started arriving late, leaving early. And when Ip Man would demonstrate a technique slowly, carefully, with precision, Bruce would watch with the look of a man who already believed he understood. Ip Man said nothing. For months, he said nothing. He watched. He waited. And if you had asked anyone in that school what Ip Man thought of Bruce Lee, they would have told you the old man did not seem to think about him at all. But that was not true. Not even close. Ip Man had seen this kind of student before. The gifted ones. The ones who mistake speed for understanding. Strength for wisdom. And he knew exactly how it always ended. They either learn, or they break. And one night, in the autumn of 1958, Bruce Lee walked into the training hall after everyone else had gone home. He stood in front of his master, and he said the words that would change both their lives. "I want a real fight, not a lesson. A fight." The man looked at him for a long time. Then he stood up from his chair. Slowly, quietly, and he nodded. Now get this. Bruce Lee did not expect him to say yes. Not like that. Not that easily. He expected a lecture. He expected the old man to shake his head and talk about discipline, about patience, about respect. That is what teachers do. They talk. They delay. They redirect. But Ip Man did none of those things. He simply walked to the center of the training hall and stood there, hands at his sides, relaxed, like a man waiting for a bus. And that calm, that absolute stillness, it did something to Bruce. It made him angry, because when you challenge someone and they do not flinch, it means one of two things. Either they do not take you seriously, or they already know how this ends. And both of those options are insulting when you are 18 and full of fire. So Bruce attacked. No bow, no signal. He just moved. And when Bruce Lee moved, it was fast. Not regular fast. Not athletic fast. The kind of fast that makes your eyes lie to you. He threw a straight punch aimed at Ip Man's chest. Full commitment. Full speed. And it hit nothing. His fist passed through the space where Ip Man had been standing a half-second before. The old man had shifted. Just barely. 2 inches to the left. That is all it took. Bruce followed with a chain punch. 3 rapid strikes to the center line exactly as he had been taught. Ip Man redirected the first. Absorbed the second with a soft parry. And on the third, he did something Bruce had never felt before. He guided Bruce's own arm across his body so that Bruce's momentum carried him sideways. Off balance. Stumbling. Bruce caught himself. Reset. Came again. Harder this time. A low kick to the knee followed by an overhand strike. Ip Man moved his leg back 1 step and caught Bruce's wrist mid-swing. Not with force. With timing. The kind of timing that cannot be faked. The kind that takes 40 years to develop. And in one smooth motion, Ip Man turned Bruce's energy against him and sent him stumbling into the wooden wall of the training hall. Bruce hit the wall with his shoulder. It stung. Not because of the impact, because of the shame. He had not landed a single strike. Not one. And the old man had not even broken his breathing. Now here is where it turns. Bruce pushed off the wall and came again. This time wild. No technique. No structure. Just raw aggression. He swung. He kicked. He lunged. And Ip Man handled every single movement the way a parent handles a child who is throwing a tantrum. With patience. With control. Without anger. And then it was over. Ip Man stepped inside Bruce's guard, placed one open palm on his chest, and pressed him gently against the wall. Not hard. Not violently. The way you close a door that has been left open by the wind. Bruce's back touched the wood. His arms dropped. His chest was heaving. His shirt was soaked through. Ip Man was not breathing hard. His hair was not out of place. His hands were steady. He looked at Bruce the way a doctor looks at an X-ray. Calm. Reading. Measuring. And then he spoke. A cup that is already full cannot receive more tea. He paused. Empty yourself. He let go of Bruce's chest. Turned around. Walked back to his chair. Sat down. Picked up his tea. And took a sip as if nothing had happened. The training hall was silent. The wooden floor creaked once under Bruce's feet as he shifted his weight. A clock on the wall ticked. Outside, somewhere far below, a car horn sounded. And Bruce Lee stood against that wall, breathing hard, staring at the back of the old man's head. The room felt still, almost peaceful, as if the fight had never happened at all. But it had happened. And here is where the story changes. Because what Bruce Lee did next was not what you would expect. He did not bow. He did not apologize. He did not thank his master for the lesson. He walked out. He pushed open the door of the training hall and walked into the night streets of Hong Kong without saying a single word. And the thing you need to understand is that this was not silence born from humility. This was silence born from rage. Because Bruce Lee had just been shown, in the clearest possible way, that everything he believed about himself was wrong. And he was not ready to accept that. Not yet. Not even close. Believe me, that kind of defeat does something to a young man. Not the physical kind. Bruce had lost fights before. He had taken punches. He had been knocked down on rooftops and gotten back up. That kind of losing he could handle. But this was different. A man had not hurt him. A man had not even tried. The old man had beaten him the way you swat a fly. With minimal effort. With mild inconvenience. And that is a kind of defeat that burns deeper than any punch. Now here is the first development you need to know. Within days of that night, Bruce stopped going to IP Man school. He just stopped. No explanation. No farewell. He vanished from the training hall as if he had never been there. And the other students noticed. Some of them whispered that Bruce had been expelled. Others said he had gotten into trouble with the triads. But the truth was simpler and uglier than any rumor. Bruce was too proud to walk back through that door. And this is where he made his costly mistake. Instead of returning to Ip Man, instead of sitting with the defeat and learning from it, Bruce went looking for validation somewhere else. He started fighting again. Not training. Fighting. Street fights. Challenge matches. Rooftop brawls. He went back to the only thing that had ever made him feel powerful. Hurting people who were slower than him. And it worked. For a while. He won fight after fight. His speed was still extraordinary. His reflexes were still sharp. And every victory told him the same lie. That he was right. That he was ready. That Ip Man was just an old man clinging to an old style. And that Bruce Lee had already surpassed him. Now here is the second development. And this is the one that changes everything. Bruce got into a fight with the son of a triad leader. A serious fight. Not a schoolyard brawl. The kind of fight that has consequences beyond bruises. He won, of course. Badly. And within 48 hours, the word came back through the neighborhood. The triad family wanted retaliation. Not a rematch. Retaliation. Bruce's father found out before Bruce did. And for the first time in his life, Li Hoi-chen did not try to fix it. He did not make a call. He did not smooth things over. He sat his son down at the kitchen table and told him the truth. You cannot stay in Hong Kong. If you stay, they will hurt you. Or you will hurt someone in a way that cannot be undone. Either way, your life here is finished. Bruce argued. He shouted. He said he could handle it. His father did not raise his voice. He simply repeated the same sentence. Your life here is finished. And within weeks, the decision was made. Bruce Lee would be sent to America, to San Francisco, alone, with $100 in his pocket and the address of a family friend. 18 years old. No degree, no plan, no master. And the worst part, the part that sat in his chest like a stone. He never went back to say goodbye to IP Man. He left Hong Kong with that defeat still unresolved, still burning, still unanswered. And he carried it with him across the ocean like a wound he refused to look at. America was not kind to Bruce Lee. Not at first. He arrived in San Francisco with barely enough money to eat for a month. He worked in restaurants. He washed dishes. He slept in small rooms with thin walls and loud neighbors. And for the first time in his life, nobody knew who he was. Nobody cared how fast his hands were. Nobody was impressed. He was just another young man from Hong Kong trying to survive in a country that did not particularly want him there. And that is when it started. Slowly, quietly, the way real change always begins. Not with a moment of inspiration, not with a speech, but with a failure that repeats itself until you finally pay attention. Bruce started teaching martial arts in Seattle. Small classes, backyards, parking lots, and he was good at it. His students loved him. His speed amazed them. But every time he sparred with someone bigger, stronger, more grounded, he ran into the same wall. His attacks were fast, but they were shallow. They landed on the surface. And when someone absorbed them and kept coming, Bruce had no answer. He would speed up, throw more, push harder, and it would not be enough. Now here is the thing. Every time that happened, every time his speed failed him, he heard IP Man's voice. Not as a memory, as a fact. A cup that is already full cannot receive more tea. And it made him furious, because he understood the words. He had always understood the words. But understanding is not the same as accepting. And accepting is not the same as living it. The confrontation did not happen in a training hall. It did not happen in a ring. It happened in a garage in Oakland, California, in 1964. Bruce Lee had been challenged by a man named Wong Jackman, a traditional kung fu practitioner who had been sent, some say, by the Chinese martial arts community to shut Bruce down, to stop him from teaching Chinese fighting arts to non-Chinese students. The fight was private, behind closed doors, no cameras, no audience beyond a handful of witnesses. And Bruce won, but not the way he wanted. The fight lasted nearly 3 minutes. 3 minutes. For a man who believed every fight should end in seconds. He chased Wong Jackman around that garage, throwing everything he had, and it took far too long. He was winded. His arms were heavy. His structure had collapsed halfway through. He had won with raw aggression, not with skill. And when it was over, he stood in that garage with his hands on his knees, gasping for air, and he knew. He knew that Ip Man had been right. About all of it. Speed without structure is just panic. Power without sensitivity is just noise. And a fighter who refuses to empty his cup will spend his whole life throwing punches that land on the surface and never reach the center. That night, Bruce Lee went home. He sat at his kitchen table. And he began to write. Not a letter. Not a diary entry. A system. A philosophy. A new way of fighting that threw away everything rigid and kept only what worked. He called it Jeet Kune, the way of the intercepting fist. And every single principle at its core, every one, came from the lesson Ip Man had given him on the floor of that training hall in Hong Kong 6 years earlier. The old man's palm on his chest, the quiet voice, the still eyes. Bruce had been carrying the answer the whole time. He had just been too full to receive it. Until that night in Oakland, when the cup finally cracked. And everything Ip Man had poured into him years ago finally rushed in. Years passed. Bruce Lee became the man the world knows today. He made films that changed cinema. He moved in ways no one had ever seen on screen. He trained actors, fighters, champions. He wrote books. He gave interviews that sounded more like philosophy lectures than press junkets. And people would listen to him speak about water. About emptiness, about the art of fighting without fighting, and they would nod and think he was wise beyond his years. But here is what most people never knew. Every one of those ideas, every single principle Bruce Lee became famous for, they all started with one moment, one night, one old man in a training hall who placed a palm on a teenager's chest and told him to empty his cup. Bruce returned to Hong Kong in the early 1970s. He was famous by then. Truly famous. The kind of famous where people stop on the street and forget how to speak. He had made the big boss. Fist of Fury. The Way of the Dragon. He was the biggest star in Asia. And one of the first things he did when he came back was visit Ip Man. Now, Ip Man was old by then. Very old. He was thin. He moved slowly. His body was not what it had been. But his eyes were the same. Calm. Still. Reading everything without saying a word. And when Bruce walked into that training hall again, more than a decade after he had walked out of it in anger, Ip Man looked at him the way he had always looked at him. Without surprise. Without judgment. As if he had been expecting him all along. Bruce bowed. Deeply. For a long time. And when he stood up, his eyes were wet. He did not say much. He did not need to. Ip Man already knew. He had always known. Some students need years to hear what was said in a single sentence. And Ip Man had been patient enough to wait. They spent time together in those final years. Not much. Ip Man was fading. His health was poor. But there were afternoons where Bruce would sit with him and they would talk. Not about fighting. About life. About what it means to teach someone who does not want to learn. About what it costs to wait for a student to come back. And in those quiet conversations, Bruce finally understood something he had missed all those years ago. Ip Man had not agreed to that fight to teach him a lesson. He had agreed because he loved him. Because a real master does not protect his student from failure. He gives the student exactly the failure they need, at exactly the right time, and then he waits, however long it takes. Ip Man died on the 2nd of December, 1972. Bruce Lee died 7 months later. He was 32 years old. The world lost both of them within the span of a single year. And to this day, people talk about Bruce Lee's speed, his power, his movies, his philosophy. But very few people talk about the night it all began. A training hall in Hong Kong. A teenager who thought he was ready. And an old man who showed him, with one open palm and 5 quiet words, that he was not. Empty yourself. That was the lesson. Not just for fighting. For everything. For learning. For loving. For growing old. For letting go of the person you think you are so you can become the person you are meant to be. Bruce Lee carried that lesson every day of his life. And now, if you have listened this far, so do you. The hardest lessons come from the hands you trust most. And the greatest teachers are the ones who wait for you to be ready to hear what they said a long time ago.